All right, everyone, welcome back. Combat Radio. We've brought in a legend today. This is going to be fun. You may remember we've interviewed him in the past, and it was pretty epic. At that point in time, we were talking a lot about 21 Jump Street. This time, something new with director Bill Corcoran. We are going to look at some of the legendary work he's done with some legendary talent. But right out of the gate, we started talking about the Black Stallion and the Black Stallion Returns. And out of just right off the docket comes a Francis Ford Coppola story about you being dropped in Morocco and having to organize the shoot. And you even referenced like Mohammed. That's how funny the story was getting before I stopped Bill short. And anyway, Bill, please tell everyone about the Black Stallion episode in your production life here.
Well, as you know, Ethan, we talked about, I was involved very luckily with the very first Black Stallion movie that was done in Toronto. A lot of the shooting at the racetrack and the house and the running around the neighborhoods and stuff like that. So I had been very proud to be involved with that production. And then when they did the Black Stallion Returns a couple of years later, they called me up and said, would you consider coming with us to Morocco and Rome and doing the same thing you did there? Well, I got to Morocco. They, of course, thought I was fluent in French because I'm Canadian, and that wasn't the case. But I realized very quickly that the Moroccan horse world was very different than anything we knew in North America. Individual guys owned a horse. Often the horse, would be part of their family, living in the same house pretty much. And they were all stallions and all what they call Arab barb horses. So I had to phone them up and say, hey, guys, none of these people have phones. They don't have, I have no way of communicating with them. So I am going to make a proposal to you. And my proposal was that I would buy all 36 horses, get them trained and broken and ready for the movie, and have them be able to move them around from city to city in Morocco as we did the shooting. Well, as you can imagine, I just finished a horse session here, and I mentioned to a young lady that the only two people who had horse trailers were the King of Morocco and the Prince, Moulay Abdullah. So we needed to figure out a way to buy all these horses, first of all, and to put it in perspective, in the Black Stallion Returns, it's a 12-horse race with the 12 tribes vying against the Black Stallion.
Right.
So I had to get 36 horses because we could only use a horse for a couple of hours. And then they were dry in the desert, or they'd been running too long, or we had to change them over. So I had 3 bay horses, 3 white horses, 3 gray horses, times 36. And I had to find those at auction sales, what they call souks, in the middle of the desert, all around Morocco. They would have a souk sale every morning in Timisset or Marrakesh or wherever. So I would have to go there at 4 o'clock in the morning, sleep in my car, and wait until the sales started. And then if you know anything about dealing with Moroccans, they love to haggle, and they love to, they love to sit you down, and I didn't have the time. So I had to figure out a way to signal somebody to buy that horse and, not get gouged that it was going to be 6,000 dirham when I knew it was a $2,000 or 2,000 dirham horse. So that was a huge adventure that I put myself on. And then we got the horses. We started up a little ranch first in Rabat, and then we moved it to down onto the coastline because that was where our first locations were started. And then we would provide the horses for the race, which were probably in 15 locations.
Incredible. The only thing I know about the haggling in Marrakesh is what I've seen in the French Foreign Legion films in the old days. And I think that's remarkable that you were able to marshal that up. And, you're on the tail of a very, very, just an incredible landmark of a movie. The original Black Stallion, particularly the ending that you mentioned a moment ago, that horse race, that's done almost almost in pure silence. one of the best endings of a film. And when you were offered the opportunity to come back for a sequel,
Yeah.
how did you look at that? Did you look at that as a job? Was that just a job, or was it daunting that you're, oh my gosh, we're going to try to
It blew my
upstage?
mind. Quite honestly, Ethan.
Yeah.
Uh, when when I got the call for the first Black Stallion, like I grew up with horses, read all the books.
Yeah.
I thought somebody was pulling my leg. I thought it was a joke. They were like, "You want to do a movie called The Black Stallion?" I'm like, "Yeah, right. Come on. What are we really doing?"
Yeah.
And when I went to the airport to pick up Tom Sternberg, who was the producer, Carol Ballard, who of course is a legend as a cinematographer, as a director, Caleb Deschanel, who also was a legend
Right.
of so many movies, and I got them in the car. I was so excited, and I said, "Guys, well, what what other movies have you done?" And there was dead silence. They'd never done a movie before.
Isn't that amazing to think that?
Yeah,
And that's
and
the
it's one of the
first one.
reasons I think yeah. So that was for me a gigantic, like, oh my God, here we go. And I read the script, thought the script was marvelous, and I just made a full commitment to make it. Honestly, by the end of it, I was exhausted.
I bet.
It was a shooting in Toronto. They invited me to go to Rome and Sardinia at the end of it. And I was so exhausted and beaten up, and I regret this every day of my life. I said, no, I can't go. I just don't want to, I don't want any more of it. Because
So,
you're working with horses, and we had 4 Black Stallion horses.
yeah.
And you're working in, it's all about the light, where the sun is shining, where the sky is beautiful. So you're moving all the time. You're dancing around to make the movie every day, every moment of every day, which was not what I grew up with. That was not the tradition of the kind of movie making that I had done before.
Steve Surgic, the director of The Witcher and Punisher, Daredevil, we just looked at that film and we were still in awe of how beautiful every frame was. In fact, we were both saying, we said, this is the most interesting opening shot, aside from maybe Star Wars, where it's just the water, the ship.
Yeah.
It's so unconventional that I actually I had forgot the movie opened like that. And I'm looking at that going, what am I looking at for a moment? And I realized, we're looking straight. But it's, so you said that you passed on the Sardinia part of the shoot, and that's obviously the front of the movie. Is that what they were doing? Is they were bouncing back to
That's
the
right.
shipwreck part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
the beach stuff, and and the Rome was the ship.
Oh,
That
unreal.
that ship was built inside of a studio in Cinecittà in Rome.
Incredible. It's also like it's the most nerve-wracking, I think. The beginning of that, when that ship goes down, for us as young people watching that was the most nerve-wracking opening sequence. I mean, genuinely.
It's okay. Help tie. Here, tie the bottom. Tie the bottom. No! Let's get out of here. These guys, don't move, hang on.
Work there. It's so funny because you must have been blown away, Bill, when you saw that in the theater and knew you had a part in
Oh,
that.
yeah, totally. Yeah. I I literally, Ethan, sat in the theater and cried because there were 3,000 people in the theater and
Yeah.
everybody was so moved and so taken by the beauty of the film, by the storytelling that they did, and by the history of, the writer, uh, Walter Farley, had written 32 books all about the Black Stallion and had a huge sales around the world with horse lovers. So it was really the beginning of this incredible adventure that I was on.
Oh man.
I did get, we did the Black Stallion, we did Return of the Black Stallion, and then it went to series. And I got a chance to direct a couple of episodes with Mickey Rooney and reunite with Mickey because he, of course, wasn't in the middle in the second movie.
No, he wasn't. And I used to see him at Casa Vega a lot, actually. He was a local legend here. Obviously, he was a legend much beyond the local haunts, if you knew.
Yeah.
Now, did the series have Kelly Reno in it?
No, it had another young kid. Kelly by
Yeah.
then would have been about 16 or 17.
Right. I guess he ages out of it, right?
Yeah,
But man, what a great performance by him.
terrific. And
Yeah,
I don't know whether you knew this, but he wanted to do the movie because he wanted to learn to swim. He was
really.
not, as a kid, yeah, he grew up in Colorado, in Pueblo, Colorado. And, and his dad raised greyhound racing dogs. And he just thought it was a great opportunity to learn how to swim.
I guess
They
that's a
looked at
good reason to a good movie.
3,000 kids, Ethan.
I
Fred
bet.
Roos was the casting director, and they looked all over the world before they found Kelly at 3,000 kids and tested them and looked at them.
Unreal. That's just unreal. He did a great performance, and his chemistry with Rooney is so authentic. Uh, I mean, that's probably my
Yeah.
favorite.
And none of
My
that, or very little of that was actually scripted. A lot of that was Mickey, just being Mickey and knowing, the intent of the scene and how to get the kid to engage with him in a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that may be my favorite performance of everything he did, Boys Town, and I mean, it's endless with him. That is probably my favorite. I mean, that scene when he finds all the old trophies covered in dust, and he realizes that this is just a living
Yeah.
legend, and the carriage driver in that shows up like a ghost.
Clarence Muse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just incredible.
Very,
And just
very
that
famous, African-American actor,
the
who we were just so engaged to work with.
oh, just that move at the end when there's so many moments, like when they're testing him out in the rain, the rainstorm to see his speed. But
Oh,
then,
yeah.
at the end when, he just pushes the top hat over his eyes. I think of that end of that movie and it just, what a work of art. Just absolutely incredible. Now, what were Francis's thoughts outside of the production on it? Like, did you ever talk to him about what he thought, what the movie meant to him and what he thought about it?
I mean, I think for him, quite honestly, he had owned a number of the books and he wanted to
Yeah.
get it made. Carol Ballard was obviously the first choice of somebody who they were friends from UCLA or USC.
Yeah.
And he wanted to give Caleb Deschanel a crack at it as well. But he sent them up to Canada. And, I think to be out of the storm and be a little bit where we could maybe skirt some of the Hollywood rules, because he knew that this was about a guy, Carol Ballard, looking for magic in every frame,
Yeah.
and he was just indomitable about finding that magic with the locations, with the sunlight, with the way everything played in every scene, in every shot. It's a great lesson for filmmakers because he never let go. And Francis was still kind of finishing up Apocalypse Now. He was very much involved in editing and trying to get his money out of Apocalypse Now. So he wasn't up in Canada very much, and I think he might have been in Morocco for like a week, but not very long. But I
You
think
know,
it was a $4.5 million budget, so it wasn't a huge budget. And I'll tell you a funny story. On the very first day, they went out shooting, and they came to me at the end of the day, and they said, "Would you be able to take over the floor?" And I said, "Well, what happened? Why?" "Well, Carol fired the first AD, and we need somebody to be brought in from LA who's finishing up Apocalypse Now. And can you take over until," his name was Doug Claiborne, "until Doug Claiborne comes into town and he can take over the shoot, because we don't want to shut down." But Carol and his best friend got into a huge fight on the very first day, and he fired him. So I had to take over the set, as well as, be managing the locations and hotels and stuff like that. And it was
yeah.
nerve wracking, because I knew, I knew the stakes were very high, and we just had to do whatever we had to do. But I was
It's gr-
very lucky too, Ethan. I had, three of the great trainers in the world for training horses, and in Corky Randall, and his brother JR, and I'm going to blank on the other trainer, Rex Harris. I've forgotten, but he was the trainer on Hidalgo. So all amazing, amazing horse trainers, and they specialized, obviously, from the movie, in training horses at Liberty, where they were just working signals behind or beside the camera.
As an accomplished director yourself, that so much of how you frame up the landscape of like a post shipwreck scenario could either engage the audience or completely lose them. And to look at every detail, the way they shot that sequence and still make it entertaining.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, it was
you know,
poetic, absolutely poetic. And again, no dialogue, because he's not talking to the horse,
right,
all about the music and the visuals.
right. And when he starts to ride the horse, and the magic of the composer is felt for the first real time in the movie, it's like, wow, wow. And what a great, I mean, from top to bottom, what a great opportunity. They brought in the right guy, man, for both of them. And the Black, we got to do a whole thing with you on the Black Stallion Returns, because I thought that was an underappreciated sequel. And I love that they had a different set of action sequences in it. They got away from what was the first one and they tried to go in a different direction. He's getting shot at times, but he also has
Yeah.
that whole. I figured you were going to tell us when you were going to see the Prince that you pulled that whole "I want to be your guest" routine out of your pocket. Because that's a real thing. That's a real
Oh,
thing.
oh, yeah. I did, in a very different way. I got a letter from the ambassador of Canada to Morocco, which was called an attestation. And it was a letter from the King of Morocco that I could present to anybody in Morocco to say, "I'm doing this on behalf of the monarchy, and they
Oh
are
wow.
backing me." So anytime I would have a problem, I would pull this piece of paper out, and all of a sudden doors would open.
Do you still have that?
I do not. I wish
Oh
I
man,
did.
dude, you got to put that. You got to
I
put
still have
some.
the saddle. I have one of the saddles from the Black Stallion Returns.
That's a good keepsake. Have you seen Kelly
Yeah,
Reno
sure
lately?
is. No, I have not.
I wonder what he's doing now. I'm sure he's probably on the convention circuit or, you
I don't
know,
think so. He became a truck driver
I
in
know.
Pueblo. He had a very bad car accident. I
Yeah.
think that he was raising horses or cattle or something in Colorado. He never wanted to be an actor. And I think by the time he finished the second movie, he had pretty much had it with the Hollywood world. And he just wanted to get back to he's such a humble, normal kid that, he wanted to live a simple life with his mom and dad, who were wonderful. And
Yeah.
he just walked away from the whole thing.
Imagine that, being able to walk away after having it with the Hollywood machinery around you. What a unique thought. You've done
Yeah.
a lot
But
of.
mind you, he was only 14 when he left.
Right. That's right. He was still very young. Now, Bill,
Yeah.
you're obviously one of our intrepid directors. You worked on everything from Wiseguy to the Waltons movie, Pensacola Wings of Gold. But And we talked a lot about 21 Jump Street because I think last time you were here, because I think Brad Pitt was in your episode, wasn't he? Or who
He
was in
was,
your?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Brad Pitt.
No, it was
It was,
Brad Pitt, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And you had to direct
as a
Johnny.
very young teenage kid.
Yeah, teenage punk. What's changed, Brad?
Yeah,
Brad and Johnny Depp in in a scene together. But we were at the studio talking about legendary Sherlock Holmes movies and unique Sherlock Holmes movies, and you've directed one where it's actually one of the best Sherlock Watson combinations, I think. And I'm looking at this movie, and it occurred to me, I was like,
yeah.
wait, Bill directed the Victoria Falls film, which I was that a TV movie? Harmony Gold was one of the producers on that. So was that for television or?
It was Harmony Gold, and it was a miniseries, a 4-hour miniseries. I think the miniseries, the 4-hour version, is around somewhere. So Harmony Gold through Harry Allen Towers made 8 hours of Sherlock Holmes. There was one that was in Austria and Luxembourg, and
Right.
then I got I did the one in Luxembourg, London, and we shot in Zimbabwe.
And it's Christopher Lee as Holmes.
Harry, I don't know if you know of Harry Allen Towers,
Well, I
but
know
if you
who
look
he
him up,
was.
you can see he was okay. So he was one of the first people to do radio drama out of England, and he bought from the Sir Conan Doyle estate the rights to all of the books. But cleverly, he also bought the character rights. So once the books were done, which he did a lot of, he could make up his own stories using the characters that he owned, which was what the premise of the Sherlock Holmes were. So he took Holmes and Watson when they had retired and lived raising bees in Sussex and said, okay, I'm going to take him out of retirement, have the king go and send one of his men, take him out of retirement, and send him to one of the colonies where we have problems. And the colony, of course, was down in South Africa at that time with the Culloden Diamond.
Yeah, I felt like that was on parallel with one of my favorite Basil Rathbone films, Terror by Night, where in that one the diamond is I don't know, out of India, the Star of India or something. It's a
Yeah,
familiar sort of mechanism in the Holmes universe. You know, there's a jewel that he's for whatever reason he's entrusted to defend. You know, not Brinks, not a squad of like the SAS, but Holmes is your guy, which you don't have a movie without that. But this was great because legend Christopher Lee was Holmes, and I thought he was surprisingly good in that role.
yeah.
Um,
No, he was Holmes. And
and
his best, his best buddy was Watson.
were they best buddies in real life?
They knew each other since 8 years old. They went to private school together.
Wow. Well, because Patrick had worked on the Avengers, and I was looking, and this even has Richard Todd show up in it, who the longest
Sir
day.
Richard Todd.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir. Forgive me, Sir Richard Todd, absolute
yeah,
legend. Disney loved him for like the Rob Roy movies and the Robin Hood movies, but he was sort of famous for playing a version of himself in The Longest Day during the
yeah,
Orne River Bridge raid. He was on the real raid, but I think in the movie he played Major Howard, but where in the original and I thought that was always remarkable. But Richard Todd shows up in this, and Jos Ackland shows up in this, and I was like
yeah.
watching this again. I revisited and I go, who is not in this movie? And the first thing that kind of comes to mind is how does a director as skilled as Bill deal with all these legendary personalities? They're all probably very professional and went smoothly, but I'm kind of curious of what your first day on the job was like.
Well, of course, I met Christopher and I had worked with Patrick before, so I knew Patrick. And I just spent time with them before the shoot, and we talked a little bit about the movie, about the history of Sherlock Holmes, the importance of it,
Yeah.
how exciting it was to be doing a sequel basically to Sherlock Holmes,
Yeah.
and against the backdrop of, Zimbabwe and Victoria Falls and the Matabele Indian people, and just everything about it was exciting. Harry Allen Towers knew all of these guys for years and years and years. And so he could pick up the phone and make a phone call, and they would come to work for him anywhere in the world. and they just adored his spirit, and they adored, his kind of craziness that he would come up with. And they all showed up. They were incredible to work with. Not a complaint the whole time, and we were, not a big budget picture. So we were shooting in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Luxembourg, not with big trailers and all of the paraphernalia of Hollywood. And they were outstanding. Couldn't have asked for a better group of people.
I don't want to divulge where this goes because people should see it, and you can see it right now. It's on Amazon, and but it centers around kind of a diamond heist, and the idea, somewhat bittersweet, of Holmes trying to retire and being called back for.
Yeah.
Even like Mrs. Hudson is like depressed about it, but this dynamic combination, I think it's one of the best Holmes Watson combinations we've ever had, goes on this basically road trip through the bush, and it becomes one adventure after another. And I have to ask, like, when you're sitting in your director's chair, Bill, next to Christopher Lee, like, what is the conversation like?
Well, mostly it was a lot of storytelling. Christopher was interesting because even though the playing of Dracula made him, he was somewhat embarrassed that people looked at him as Dracula. And he wanted, he had done so many other things on stage and in other movies and TV shows. He always wanted people to forget that and to look at him in a different way. And certainly, I think, had it not been that there was a British Sherlock Holmes that was released about the same time, and I think it took the wind out of the sails of that particular miniseries, because we had planned to do another couple of them, one of them in Canada, another one in Australia, I think it was, and just keep Holmes always traveling and having to, solve these problems in the colonies. And it would have been great fun. I was so disappointed that we didn't end up being able to make those. But consummate professional, enthusiastic about every scene. Just, I can't say enough good things about any of those people who were on the show.
He had shown up. He was in a Hammer version of Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yes.
And I knew him rather as a kid, not for Dracula. I hadn't seen that yet. You know how the old days were with television. A lot of that didn't make it to us until later. But we knew him as a Bond villain. And Patrick would show up in a Bond film opposite Moore also. But we kind of knew him as, like, what is it, Scaramanga, the man in the golden gun? What was it? This ominous...
Yeah.
This way, Miss Bond. Ah, Miss Goodnight.
James.
Aren't we a little overdressed, Goodnight?
I like a girl in a bikini. No concealed weapons. Miss Goodnight, please. Mr. Bond. Now let's see what Knick-Knack has for us. Ah, mushrooms.
The fried mushroom looks terribly interesting.
Yes, I'd noticed that. I'll get around to it later. Having fun in the sun, Goodnight?
Yes. I could stay here forever.
Excellent. Slightly reminiscent of a 34 Mouton.
Then I must add it to my cellar.
You live well, Scaramanga.
At $1 million a contract, I can afford to, Mr. Bond. You work for peanuts. A hearty well done from Her Majesty the Queen and a pittance of a pension. Apart from that, we are the same. To us, Mr. Bond, we are the best.
There's a useful four-letter word, and you're full of it.
And he just cut such a presence, and I thought it was just so good to see him do the Holmes thing. And then, I mean, I cannot imagine what it was like to rap for the day and have those guys and then Richard Todd on the same set.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you end it.
Mounted on horses. These are guys in their 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
who are riding horses in the middle of Zimbabwe, and just not a blink, not a, okay, we'll get up on the horses now and go riding.
Unreal. I mean, it's I wish I could take lessons from your time directing them and apply it to people working today, because I feel like the mentality of just getting the job done was so different,
Well,
especially with those British
to,
jobbers.
yeah, to your point, I mean, they did their homework. The only bump I had in the road was not doing enough homework at one point in time. And we went to, I've forgotten the name of it, but there's a famous place in London that specializes in wigs and facial hair.
Yeah.
And they have everything. Like, just you go in there and you go back to whatever century you want, and they've got it all laid out. And I was talking to Joss Ackland because we were there for a fitting, and I said, well, wouldn't this look good? And he looked aghast at me. He said, oh my God, Henry would never ever wear anything like that. Here's what he would wear, and here's what we were going to wear for the movie. And I went, oh, okay. I know nothing as a Brit. So
Yeah.
he had just done all of his homework. He knew these characters inside out, and they did their homework. They knew exactly the history of Holmes. They knew the relationship of Holmes and Watson. And, and I found that 95%, 100% of the time with the British actors.
Yeah. Well prepared. And Yoss would go on to be a villain in Lethal Weapon 2.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
franchise, and one of the most effective ones. Also, Hunt for Red October. He showed up in a ton of
Yes.
stuff, but
Oh, he was great. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I was sad. Well, sad to see all of them passing. Jenny Seagrove was also in it too. Do you remember? She was Lily Langtry on the boat.
Right.
And I think in the 2-hour version, she's barely seen, but in the 4-hour version, there's much more of a romance between her and Holmes.
How was Seagrove to work with? Because she also, had her credentials.
Again, fabulous. The humility with which you deal with all of these British actors.
Yeah.
You look at American television now and how many British actors have made the transition, and even Australian actors, because it's about doing the work. There's no ego. It's not about the big paycheck because they don't get paid very well.
Right.
It's about being a working actor and wanting to get out there. And whether it's theater or, it's going to a Comic-Con or doing a huge big movie, it's all about doing the work, being a part of the storytelling machine, and loving to entertain people.
How did you feel when you had the opportunity present itself to do a Sherlock Holmes movie? And how did that happen?
I was with William Morris at the time, and they were very good about, setting up these deals. And I think Harry Alan Towers and Anita Hope, who was his casting director, had been dealing with, wanting to find 2 directors. Peter Sasdy directed the first one, and myself, who would be willing to take on a picture like this. It was daunting. I think we had 45 days of shooting and traveling all over, and,
Wow.
getting malaria shots and worrying about, dengue fever and all that stuff. It was by no means a simple feat. But to any of these things, Ethan, it's such an honor, to be part of that, whether it's Pensacola Wings of Gold or the Waltons or something like this. Or I did a Western, I think about, with Willie Nelson and Chris Christopherson.
Yeah.
You do your research, you look at it. I was able to shoot that in the same village that Sergio Leone shot all of his movies with Clint Eastwood. So it's like walking through a wall and you're suddenly surrounded by this magic that has been part of our history and part of our storytelling life that we grew up wanting to do.
I want to break that Western down with you next time because I'd love to rewatch it. But Chris Christopherson remains one of my all-time favorite people to talk to. Hard to put into words what he was like.
Again, with he and Willie, the humility, and Waylon Jennings, just the most willing, eager, humble guys I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, I remember I met him and I said, I want to make this all about Convoy and Sam Peckinpah as a joke, and he just started laughing. He's like, "Why? But he was just such a sense of humor about himself and just always ready for a laugh. And, just one of our great. I don't know if people realize how fantastic he was as a human being.
Yeah.
A big loss. And
And ironically, Ethan, he worshipped Willie.
yeah,
Like, you'd think, okay, Willie and Chris are kind of on a par in a way, although Chris had more experience as an actor, but he absolutely worshipped the ground that Willie Nelson walked on. And it gave you some kind of an idea just by watching Chris, the honor that he felt being near Willie and working with Willie.
Now, Willie Nelson, we had seen him in Heat for Michael Mann. We'd seen him in The Electric Horseman for Sidney Pollack. Big directors as well as Bill Corcoran. They depended on him to deliver. He had like that. He was hired by some of the best, including yourself. Now, give me one, since we're talking about him, one hilarious Willie Nelson moment on the set, because he's pretty candid.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple I could tell you, and this one really goes to the humility of both Chris and Willie. So I was walking back we used to have lunch every day together, and
Yeah.
in Spain you have these big lunches with beer and wine and food, and somehow it all gets served in an hour, and then you go back to work. And I was going back to work, and Willie had this tiny little trailer, and he leaned out, he said, Bill, do you have a second? I said, sure, Willie, what can I do? I walked in, he said, come on in my trailer for a second. And he was embarrassed. He said, look, Chris and I, we've been working every night playing music together. And we wrote a song for the show. I don't know whether you want to hear it or not. Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson wrote a song for my movie. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? My wife was with me at the time, and she said, can we see the lyric sheet? And he said, oh, sure, I got him down. So she took the lyric sheet with her. We sat there, and Willie played the song in his trailer to see if we would like it, to see if we would accept it for the movie, which like just brings tear to my eyes even now. It just blew my mind. And he said, I'll give it to you. It's yours if you want to use it. We did use it in the end credits at the end of the movie. And it just blew my mind. So I went back and saw Chris, and I said, God, Chris, I said, I love that song so much. Thank you so much. It's so marvelous. He says, the lyrics probably aren't the same as they were yesterday, because Willie's always fucking with the music.
Very candid. It's file that under questions one never needs to ask. Willie Nelson saying, I wrote a song for your movie. Can I see if you want to use it or like
exactly. But again,
yeah,
it just goes to the humility of this great person.
Yeah, for sure. And he's one of these guys that actually delivers on screen. Not everyone can make the transition from musical stage to acting, but he always particularly in your film, but also in Heat when he's a broken down convict, at the end of his life. There's moments he really did deliver sincerity and very organic. And I love that they had the kind of relationship where Christopherson can just say, I'd like to hear it because I'm not sure if it's the same song anymore.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to rewatch that movie. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill. I didn't mean to talk.
No, it's okay. Yeah, no, he was outstanding through the whole picture. There was one evening I was worried because I don't know if Willie smokes a little bit.
Yes.
And he was never having trouble with his lines, but there was one night where he had a 5 or 6 page monologue to do by the fire where he's with Travis Tritt. And I went to him a couple of times. I said, Willie, that's a lot. I said, I couldn't remember a page of it. I said, do you want us to get cue cards? You get what can we do? No, I says, I'll give it a shot. He said, my memory's not what it used to be, but I'll give it a shot. He came in, delivered the thing in the middle of the night, one take, and it was brilliant. And so he was a guy who always did his homework, had huge respect for the people around him. He wasn't going to let anybody down. And that's just the kind of guy that he is and still is to this day.
And isn't he the architect of Farm Aid? Wasn't he one of the forces?
Farm Aid, yes.
Yeah.
No, well, he and Neil Young.
Yeah. And The story we heard was that the IRS took his house and a fan bought it and gave it back to him. Was that true?
Yeah. Yeah, I think he owed a few a few bucks to the IRS. But
Yeah.
yeah, there was some, and I think Neil Young came to his, and Poco maybe, and Crazy Horse and a bunch of
Yeah.
other people. Once they found out that that had happened to Willie, everybody came together and helped him. And of course, he's helped so many people over the 94 years or 95 years that he's been on Earth.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the
Now,
thing about the music community is they give back.
they do, and he's a good one to give back to. He's been, on the front line trying to do a lot of good for a long time and totally likable. Now, how was Waylon Jennings in that mix?
Well, Waylon was he didn't come to Spain. He was not healthy at the time, so we had to
Yeah.
shoot his stuff in Nashville. So I went to his house to meet him, and his wife answered the door and said, "Waylon's just in the back room. He'll be right out." And I'd forgotten, this is embarrassing, but I've forgotten her name. But I looked at her and I went, "Oh my God, that's Waylon Jennings' wife. She's like a famous singer herself." And she showed me to this room, his little office area. And in the middle of the room on a platform was a motorcycle sitting in the middle of his office. And I looked at it and looked at her, and I went over, and it was the motorcycle that Buddy Holly's wife gave to him after Buddy Holly died, because he took Waylon Jennings' seat on the plane that went down with Richie Valens and all of those guys.
That's right.
So that to me was like, oh, you just, again, you can't appreciate that kind of history until you start to see it and it unfolds, in front of you. But once we built the set in a studio in Nashville, got him in there, he did his part. The other angle was all shot in Spain. So he was acting basically to a script supervisor, but he did a great job, and he started in the movie.
It's funny because the fourth act that it was part of that night, but did not get on the plane either, was Dion and the Belmonts.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's just one of the and what I
The day the music died, right?
yeah, and I forget that Richie Valens I don't think was even 20.
No.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, when you work with Gary Busey, and I have, and one does, that movie comes up a lot. His portrayal of Buddy Holly is one of his hallmark stamps he loves to work into the conversation. You could be talking about a solar eclipse. Somehow his role in Buddy Holly well work its way, and God bless it. But it's, I'm talking to you, Bill, and I think, we started off just kind of remembering your work with Johnny Depp and Brad Pitt and then the Black Stallion, and now Chris Christopherson, Christopher Lee, Jenny Seagrove. It's like, look at these legends that you had to, put a plan around and help deliver a movie with. It makes me think, like, where is the book? When are you writing the book?
Yeah, I've got to get my pen out and start on that, I guess.
Yeah, or at least record some tapes, and we'll transcribe it, because, we've only talked to you in these restricted time blocks, but it's always an incredible conversation, and only maybe 0.5% of what you've experienced.
Well, and Ethan, I just feel so privileged to have had the opportunities that I had, thanks to the people that I worked with and thanks to the industry. And, I tell people now, I was lucky enough as a Canadian kid growing up in Toronto to ride the wave from the growth of the industry, from episodic TV to movies of the week. I had a call today about an offer to do a Hallmark movie, and I'm chomping at the bit to get back at it.
Are you going to do it?
I don't know. I've got to read the script tonight when I go home and see where it's going.
Well, they brought it
And
to the
I
right guy.
continue to do writing as much as I can, but you never, somebody said, when are you going to retire? You never retire when you've had the experiences that I've had and the joy. And, I didn't miss a single day of work in 50 years because it was always something you wanted and had to do every day.
You know, man, we don't retire. The business at some point retires us, but we don't retire because if you've had a career even 1/10 as successful as yours, it's too fun to walk away from. It's exactly what you want as a kid getting into the business. I want to ask you a couple of unorthodox questions, starting with Christopher Lee. Do you remember what the last thing Christopher Lee said to you was?
I do not. No.
I wonder if you would remember it
I
the way
think
you
he
want to.
probably referred to the hopefully we'll do this again, you know? And he and Patrick were so excited about the script that we were developing for the Canadian Klondike story.
That would have been great.
And it involved a train as well. Another person who was in that movie we've forgotten about, it was Claude Akins, who
That's
played
right.
Theodore Roosevelt.
You know, I'm embarrassed because it's probably Claude's best performance. I think. You know, Claude
And
was
he
kind
was
of
he was in a train going 50 miles an hour, you know, in
know,
the heat of Rhodesia.
Claude kind of got stereotyped in these Rio Bravo or Devil Brigade kind of heavy, you know, chump like roles, lovable lug types at times. You know, he was in a Cold Shack Night Stalker film, but I felt like in your film you got a chance to see him really act and do something very unique. Because I forgot he's
Yeah.
Roosevelt, right?
Yeah, he's Roosevelt.
He's Roosevelt. And
And
I just think
he's sitting in the front of a train in a train cow catcher or a buffalo catcher, and he and Christopher Lee are having this conversation, you know, going down the railway tracks in Zimbabwe.
yeah. Yeah, I remember that's one of the brilliant things about it. They're actually at the front of the train to get all the visuals. And isn't it one time he's a suspect because some of the elements he's using to develop film or you know, it's just such a good movie. It's such a
Yeah.
good movie with such an incredible cast. Now, what was Claude like for people? We don't really talk Claude Akins very much on this show, but we love his work. What was he like on the set?
Just again, a real gentleman, you know, I just easy to get along with, excited. He was thrilled. Again, he had done his homework on Roosevelt. It was all about post presidential Roosevelt being on tour through Africa, which he did as a hunter and went out, you know, hunting zebra and buffalo and whatever he could. So it was very much in line. And that was the brilliance of these Harry Allen Towers stories, is he would pick up historical facts and
Yeah.
weave them into the story and bring these
Smart.
people into the movie. You know, he would look at that as a block of history, find out who was alive at the time, and go, well, what if Roosevelt met Sherlock Holmes on this trip? And that's what happened. But
You know,
again, I had no problems with any of those people. Everybody was so excited. And those were, you know, days when Zimbabwe was still a country that was exciting to shoot in and
yeah.
didn't have the problems that it had much later and after that.
Right, right. You know, it's funny. A friend of mine who passed away, Andrew V. McLaughlin, directed Claude in The Devil's Brigade and said one of the things about the set is, you know, Will Holden was Will Holden and Cliff Robertson would just hang back and do his part, always prepared. But he had to do a scene where Claude Akins gets dropped in a martial arts, in a mess hall. You know, he's kind of this lug through the whole thing. And he said what was great about him is he kept adding to his own mess. Like, it was like, okay, now you're going to get upset. He's like, and Claude Akins would be like, well, wouldn't it be better if I'm like coughing up the spaghetti? And wouldn't it be better if I made myself more disgusting and more, you know, kept pushing it to the point, you know, at his own expense within the frame of the scene. You know, he was like thinking about how he could make himself appear like more of a lug. I thought that was kind of an inventive way to approach it because usually
Yeah.
people want to make sure they look good. And he was like, shouldn't I vomit on myself? Or, you know?
Oh, I'm a new man here. Did not object if I join you. You don't need all that space, do you? Eating with that enormous fat behind of yours? God in heaven, man, you're not going to eat that entire nauseating mess. Small wonder you're such a monstrous tub of lard. Is it true that all you Yanks are thieves and murderers? There's one of you, they say, that's worse than all the rest. A villainous clod who never ceases derogatory remarks about the Canadians. Yes. Mind the elbow, lad. Would one of you be kind enough to point out the contemptible swine named Rocky Rockton? You've just 2 seconds to make a public apology.
What?
Time's up.
You can't do it, mate. We're under orders. If you disgrace your uniform, we'll be called martial.
Lad, it's his uniform I propose to disgrace. Now, sit down, sit down. The human body has numerous vulnerable points. The elbow, the ribs, the neck. Including the solar plexus and many other points. It's true you're a great, powerful beast. But you'll note how his own size and weight can be used against him. Name, Sergeant Patrick O'Neill. Title, hand-to-hand combat instructor. Further instruction will commence tomorrow, 0700, on the parade ground.
But he must have been a...
Well, it was those days, those character actors like Claude Akins, you know, they lasted a long, long time because they did the homework. They weren't afraid to be an integral part of the story, and they didn't care how they looked. They wanted to be, they did their character arc from beginning to end, and they made sure that it was true and that the writing never interfered with creating and playing those characters.
You know, did you have to do any kind of creative adjustments on the Sherlock Holmes script, or did it pretty much go forward as written?
We would do adjustments from here and there, you know, as we were kind of doing things. And if we didn't have, you know, the things we needed, we would rewrite it and redo and restructure it. There's always that, I think, in almost every movie, except maybe the Hallmark movies.
Yeah, I don't know if they have the time to allow you to do much exploration, but I will say, in terms of this Sherlock Holmes masterpiece you directed, it would have been nice to get those additional films, but we do have the Victoria Falls. And you said there's a 4-hour version as well. I'm not sure what version is available on Amazon. I think it's 3.5-hour runtime. So they might have trimmed 30 minutes.
Okay, that may be it then. Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, that too was, you know, that we staged the polo game in Zimbabwe with the polo players from South Africa and Zimbabwe. We shot at Victoria Falls, which was unbelievable to be on the side of the Zambezi River. And I don't know, it still gives me nightmares to think, but we put a crane up over the water with an operator on the crane and then pulled back. And it was called a giraffe crane, and then pulled back and came across and discovered the two lovers in the grass beside Victoria Falls. I'll tell you a quick story, Ethan. My dad, who was he was an executive with IBM, and he never looked very fondly at the fact that his son became a film director. And they came over to, my mom and dad came over to visit us on the set. And I was setting up a shot with about 100 extras, and Christopher and Patrick were riding horses, and there were all these Matabele guys, and we had lions and tigers and the elephants and the whole thing. And I was on the crane setting up the shot, and I didn't know my father was there. So I was like on the wheel setting it up. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to come down now here, and we're going to settle here. And I looked over, and there was my dad, and he just looked and he said, "Now I get it."
Yeah. Isn't it great you have that moment with him?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what an awesome experience to have your dad be able to see you do your magic. You know, and I'm sure there were those questions like, well, you're going to do this while you become a lawyer, right, Bill? you're going to do this while going to medical school, right, Bill? And every parent has
I
that
was in
version.
medical school.
I'm not surprised. Where were you, in Canada?
Yeah.
In Canada? Well, aren't
Yeah,
we?
at McMaster University.
We're fortunate actually that you didn't stick with it. And you
That's a
got into
whole other
filmmaking.
story. We'll deal with that on another time. I'll write that in
Ye-
the book for you.
Yeah, well, let's come back around and look at this Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, Epper, and Travis Tritt masterpiece you did. And the difficulty with you, Bill, is there's too many fun things to talk about. Like right out of the gate, we were talking about Black Stallion and Black Stallion Returns, and the whole blueprint for the conversation right out the window. But aren't we fortunate? Aren't we fortunate? So maybe if you've got a day in the coming weeks, where are you now? Your place in the Bahamas, or?
No, I'm up in Canada.
Oh, that's right. You told me
I'm
you were in
actually
Canada.
my brother has a glamping site here called Whispering Springs where they do glamping,
Yeah.
and I run an equine program for equine wellness. So I
Oh,
just finished a
fantastic.
session with somebody doing a 90-minute wellness session using horses.
Well, get me some information on it, man, and I'll put it out there for people to actually embrace if they need it. But I will say, man, it's
I'll
always
send
good.
it to you.
It's always good to catch up with you. And of course, I walk away with more questions and more thoughts than I come into these conversations with you. I'm thinking like, man, I should revisit Wiseguy. I should look at his work on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Pensacola, the Waltons movie. It's like I thought we were going to wrap this up with Sherlock Holmes, and I got 10 or 12 additional assignments to look at. So hopefully you can carve out some time in the next couple of weeks when we get back
Well, do
together.
look at Wiseguy because I think Wiseguy, not only was it a real turning point for me, but for television when
Yeah.
Stephen Cannell decided he would do arcs of 7 episodes and be able to bring. I worked with Jerry Lewis,
Right.
Kevin Spacey, Glenn Fry from the Eagles. Just one episode. Your mind, the people who were showing up on set every day.
I had talked to
Oh yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I had talked to him about
Yep.
his role in it, and
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. He loved doing it. We talked to him about it at his house. He said that was
Yeah.
one of his favorite jobs of all time. And Ken Wall was so good on that. When was the last time you talked to him?
Unbelievable. Really great. And Jonathan, of course.
Yeah.
Kenny and I keep trading emails back and forth, so I keep in touch with him.
We got to get the two of you on together to do Wiseguy stuff. He was so good on that show.
Well,
I
and
think
get Jonathan too, because Jonathan Banks was a huge part of that show.
Oh, let's get him on board, man. That show was so good. Those guys were so good. I mean, we knew Ken. We'd seen him in The Wanderers, but that Wiseguy just gave him such an additional dimension. What an incredible run. So I think Cannell's finest, maybe his best work.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so now I got to watch.
And even though he's kind of go back and watch the Kevin Spacey arc. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. I was just gonna say I'm gonna have to go back and watch the series, but I didn't mean to talk. You were gonna make an interesting point. I could tell, Bill. What were you gonna say there?
Just that Jonathan Banks was, such a big part of that show, and the two writers who, really designed and wrote the show for Steve Cannell.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. I would get script and go to Kevin Spacey, and I've never done this in my life, but he would have like a 2-page monologue, and I would just give it to him and say, Kevin, just keep going. Let's do as many takes of this as we want. I want this to be amazing. One of the tricks that I learned as a director directing that show was, and Paul Guilfoyle was in it, just a huge and unbelievable cast members. And Jerry Lewis, I got to direct Jerry Lewis,
Right,
and
but
meet him and spend time with Jerry.
And he was acting out of character. He was the bad guy, if I remember right.
It was the first time he had ever played anybody but a version of Jerry Lewis. Even in King of Comedy, he was playing Jerry Lewis.
Yeah,
but this was a huge turn for him. And so exciting to meet and work with. And again, everybody, I had to fly down to LA and everybody terrified me of working with Jerry Lewis, you know, all these horrible stories. And we got along like a house on fire. It couldn't have been nicer. In fact, years later, I went to see him at the Directors Guild of America at a tribute they were going to him. I got there, the place was packed. I couldn't get a seat. I sat at the back of the room, and I, you know, when it was over, I left. I wrote him a note just saying, you know, thank you. You know, I so appreciated going to that thing. You were amazing. Thank you very much for coming to the DGA. The next day, my son, who was about 14 at the time, picks up the phone. He turned white and he said, "Dad, it's Jerry Lewis." And Jerry was on the phone. "Bill, why the hell didn't you come backstage? If I'd known there, I would have stopped the show for you. You next time, you never do that. You come to Vegas and see me, man." And I told people that story, and they said, no. Well, I did. I did go to Vegas and see him, but they said that's old Hollywood. That's what Hollywood was really like. It was a family.
Yeah, yeah. Some of us still try to live by that code of ethics. It's funny because Scott Lewis's son and former Warner Brothers VP Bill Daly, a close friend who I worked with at Warner Brothers, we broke down a couple of Jerry Lewis movies. And that's when I learned that he was actually, whether you love the movies or not, because it's a brand of humor, he was technically one of the smartest filmmakers working.
25 movies he directed.
Yeah, incredible. And the way he went about it, like they were showing the scripts, the script notes, how he notes to the editor, really incredible. Like it gave me a level of respect so much beyond, far and beyond the performance that he delivered that I was just like, wow. And his son had the same.
Well, he also invented, Ethan, he invented the tap for television to be, so you could see it on TV.
Really?
So everybody could see it and play it back. He invented that piece of business because as a director actor, he wanted to go back and look at his performance when he was in front of the camera. So he had them hook up this. He's the father of that.
Yeah, and now no one can live without that. You know, it's funny because Scott Lewis, he told a similar story to yours. He went to see his dad perform at the Saban Theater, which is actually home to our annual Christmas event for children battling pediatric cancer. And he went to see him there, and they were estranged. And he didn't tell his dad he went, but word got to his father later that it was in the audience. And Jerry was actually very emotional about hearing that he was there, but did not come to try to say hello or connect with him, or, you know, the legends. Bro, how do you... Jerry Lewis? We're adding Jerry Lewis to the list of actors you've directed? You've got to be one of the best Jeopardy questions. No, think of it. Think of it, though. This man directed Jerry Lewis, Brad Pitt, Johnny Depp, Christopher Lee. You know, it's like it goes on and on and on with Waylon Jennings. You know, it's like, who is? Director Bill Corcoran. Buddy, I hope you'll give me some time in a couple of weeks to review some Wiseguy if you're up for it. It would be really fun to discuss it with you.
Absolutely. That'd be great. You take care of yourself, and thank you for your time, Ethan.
No, thank you, brother. This was super fun, a magnificent conversation. Much respect to you, Bill. Anything you need, let us know. We owe you one. Appreciate you.
Take care. Respect, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
They come out of darkness, sometimes with thunder, sometimes with lightning. Their presence means death. The prison master is afraid of him. The guards were afraid of him. The town is afraid of him. Lucifer is coming for you. Rest easy, Jack Carr said in a low tone. You're in the final 30 seconds of your life. No quarter. No quarter. Kill all masters. Coming soon